Hello, everyone. On Sunday, August 14th, our Sunday morning service had some technical difficulties, so that service's recording was not able to get onto YouTube. But that Sunday morning, we had Dwayne Sherman share his wonderful testimony of what the gospel and the presence of Jesus has done in his life. We also had Winsor sing a beautiful solo. And so, despite the technical difficulties, we wanted to give you especially the ability to listen to these two. And so we have recorded Dwayne Sherman separately, and then we recorded also Winsor in his solo, along with Deb Hendricks playing the piano. And so we've combined these things for a video for you to enjoy this morning. And so we do. We trust and believe that God will use these two components to speak to you, to encourage your heart, to remind you of just the power of His gospel in our lives and the presence of His kingdom here on earth, transforming lives. And ultimately with that, the beautiful, wonderful hope that one day Jesus is going to come and restore all things under His power and His rule. So we trust that these things will be a blessing to you this morning. And so enjoy.
Though men may strive to go beyond the reef of space, to crawl beyond the distant glimmering stars, this world's a room so small within my Master's house, the open sky but a portion of His yard. How big is God? How big and wide His vast domain? To try to tell, these lips can only start. He's big enough to rule His mighty universe, yet small enough to live within my heart. As winter's chill may cause the tiny seed to fall, to lie asleep till waked by summer's rain, the heart grows cold, will warm and throb with life anew. The Master's touch will bring the glow again. How big is God? How big and wide His vast domain? To try to tell, these lips can only start. He's big enough to rule His mighty universe, yet small enough to live within my heart.
I was in my early 20s when I came to Wetaskiwin. There's a lot that happened in the first 25 years of my life, and there's a lot more that happened to me since coming to Wetaskiwin. The truth is, I have a very good story, and I can't keep it to myself any longer. There's so much I've got to tell you about. I went through such a huge change. If that happened to me, I know there's hope it can happen for anyone. I'm a miracle. I need to tell you how you can be a miracle too. I grew up in a family that wasn't religious. My dad was basically a good man and did the best he could. His problem was that he was addicted to alcohol. And my mother, well, she's another story. She was a wonderful and understanding woman. Still, with all the things that the family goes through, and without getting into detail, I would describe my family as being dysfunctional. I had a difficult childhood, and that was filled with quite a bit of anger and sadness. For instance, I was only 11 when I went through the toughest thing a kid can experience. My mother died. She was only in her late 30s. My whole world got shaken, and so did the life of my two older sisters and brother. My father married again. Now I had a second mother, a stepmom. She was a good and kind woman, and I grew close to her. Somehow we managed. I can't explain it all, but the stuff I went through as a kid, something to me, school was not an easy place to me either. As a matter of fact, I took off from home when I was only 17 years of age. I developed bad habits and addictions as a teenager. I ended up being a smoker, an alcoholic, and a regular drug user. Things got so bad for me that I was finally diagnosed to have bipolar disorder. My mood swings were beating serious depression and being hyperactive. My second serious diagnosis was that I was schizophrenic. I was hearing voices that tempted me to do bad things. During the crazy time of my life, I was institutionalized and hospitalized for 10 years. I spent those 10 years in the Royal Alec Hospital Psych Ward in Edmonton, Alberta Hospital, Edmonton, and in the facility in Ponoka. My life was a mess. My body, my mind, my emotions were a mess. It was during the time in Ponoka that I met Myrna. I call her my third mother. She became as a very important person for me, and I would have to say that she was a lifesaver for me. She listened, she encouraged, she supported me emotionally, and it made a difference. During this whole time, I knew there was a God, but that didn't really mean anything to me. I had no personal kind of connection with God. After years of treatment, it was time to start life again. I decided to come to Wetaskiwin. I came with the only possessions I had, a hockey bag in which I had 2 pairs of jeans, a couple pairs of underwear, and my video game system. That's it. That's all I had. I didn't know it then, but as I look back, I realized that even though I didn't think about God much, God knew and must have been thinking about me. I had a roommate. His name was Miles. Often Miles would say, "Can I read something from the Bible?" And I'll say, "Sure." All these verses he read must have planted a good seed in me. I began to think better thoughts. We went to church a couple of services at the Salvation Army. Then we attended more church services at the Full Gospel Church. We bounced around between churches. I began to know more about God and Jesus. I heard that God's love for me was shown to me through Jesus. I was getting more serious about God and Jesus. One day I started coming to Calvary Baptist Church. Pastor Jake was speaking on Sundays for a few months. You know how Pastor Jake speaks. He speaks to your heart and challenges you about your relationship with Jesus. Well, God spoke to my heart, and I made the decision to believe in Jesus. I accepted that he died on the cross for me, my sins. I shared my story and faith in Jesus with the leaders of the church. Later, Pastor Jake baptized me. When I came out of the water, I felt a completely new person. I was ready to take on my new life with a joyful heart. My belief and acceptance of the gift of God's love and eternal life, Jesus Christ, changed my whole outlook on life. Despite all the bad things that happened to me, like my mother's early death and then also my sister's death, my friends see that God gave me a meaning and a purpose in my life. My life was supposed to be an inspiration for other people. I wanted them to know that God can give purpose and meaning to their lives too. It doesn't matter how unpopular, sick, or troubled you are. I mean, look at my life. Jesus makes everything new for me and for you. You know how he does that? He gave us his word, the Bible, and he gives us the support of other Christians. I like to call this encouragers my support network. They help us cope so we can make good decisions. One of my families who is in my support network in this church is the Knapp family. John and Cheryl Knapp were there to help me in so many ways. From starting, they treated me like their family member, being like their adopted child. I gained another brother and 2 more sisters. Wow. John gave me a job, and I worked with him for 2 years. They helped me realize that God and support of God's people, like the Knapps, made a world in the difference in my life. Now I'm going to finish with a very important chapter in my life. I bet you didn't know I was married once. I knew Carrie for 5 or 6 years before we were married. By the way, it was so special that my third mother, Myrna, in Pinocchio introduced me to Carrie. I want you to know this. Even before Carrie and I were married, God had already delivered me from needing to smoke, drink, and do drugs. It happened all at once. It seemed like I became a new person overnight because Jesus saved me from all my shame and guilt. I was filled with energy and a godly power so that I could give up all those bad habits and addictions. I experienced real victory. Don't get me wrong, a big transition also came when my meds were changed. I was taking off lithium, but to keep me in balance, I was still taking meds for my bipolar and schizophrenic conditions. But let me get back to my marriage to Carrie. We were married for 3 years when one day my Carrie got deadly sick. Yes, Carrie had her problems too. Carrie never recovered. She died. It all happened so quickly, it left me shocked and numb. I was deeply hurt. But I ended up praising God for 2 things. First, because our hope is in Jesus. I know Carrie and I will reunite in God's heavenly kingdom. For me, it wasn't goodbye. For me, it was more like, until I see you again. I praised God for one more thing. Because of God's presence, my life He has given me the mental and spiritual power to cope with whatever comes along. I take life one day at a time. I just live by trusting God and following Jesus every day. Nothing upsets me so badly that I can't cope with God's help. I have been able to deal with things when they happen. I don't worry. I just believe and trust. That's what happened to me when I applied for a job at Boston Pizza. Nobody thought I would last even a year. Did you know that I've now been there for 16 years? They have become a real family to me. They are a real safe zone for me. In fact, Justin, the manager, is my next of kin. He is the contact person who would be called anything if anything happened to me. He and the others are part of my support network. Pastor Rick asked me if I had a favorite Bible verse, and I told him I did. I have 2 verses that are written in a small card given to me by Carol Chapman. The first verse is in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5. Keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God has said, never will I leave you and never will I forsake you. This is my approach to life, my content with what I have. It keeps me grounded. I told Pastor Rick that one of the truths I lived by is this: never forget your roots, because if you lose your roots, your soul, when you forget your roots. My family had never had much, and neither did I. Those are my roots, and I will never forget that. I found that being content gives God the chance to prove his promise to me. I know he will never leave or forsake me. That's what the other Bible verse on the small card says. It's from the prophet Isaiah chapter 49, verses 15 and 16. Can a mother forget the baby at her breast and have no compassion on the child she has borne? Though she may forget, I will not forget you. See, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands. God had compassion on me all my life. I did not have pity. Having pity comes from feeling sorry. God doesn't feel sorry for me. God has compassion for me. Compassion comes from love. It's a love that never runs out. It's a love that never forgets. Isaiah says that whenever God looks at his hands, it's like he sees your image engraved on his hands. It is a constant reminder how valuable and important you are to him. He always remembers you. He never forgets you. Do you know what's so special? Everything that is true about me is true about you too. Everything God has done in my life, he wants to do in your life too. I invite you to speak with me and Pastor Jake after this service. We would like to show you how your life can be a miracle, just like my life is. God bless.
If you are affiliated with Calvary Baptist Church, we encourage you to continue your regular support. Or, if you are a visitor and would like to support this ministry, please send your contributions to the address posted on the screen. Or you can send your support with an e-transfer to the email address also posted on the screen. Thank you for joining us as we trust you have met with the resurrected Jesus along with us today. May the love of Jesus be your joy this week.